Joey here as the Critical Missourian, where I talk about everyday life, about Missouri and beyond. So, on this video, I want to continue where I left off. So this is part 2 of the bleak future of small farms and farming in this country. I mean, in the first video, and you must watch the first video in order to get an idea of what I'm going to be talking about on this second one. So, if you haven't watched that one, please watch that first video before you get into details of this one. So, because they all roll together. So, in the last video, I talked about demographic changes, the fact that farmers are squeezed out by higher costs, lower profits, or lower income, and various other demographics, and how younger kids have also not wanted to do farming. So on this video, I wanted to get more in depth with each subject. So I'm going to do something different than I normally do with my other videos. This video will be divided into segments, and where I can focus on each factor that is really important to focus on, so that everything ain't being mixed up or blended together. So so let's get on with the video. Okay, on this segment, I want to talk about the effects of the environment and climate change, and how it's affecting affecting our farmers. More about water, how it's all tied together, the water supply. If you stop and think, with climate change, it's affecting our weather patterns so badly that lower amounts of salt, we're having a problem where there's declining amounts of snowfall in the mountains. So come spring, whenever the glaciers start melting, that feeds into the wells, feeds into the rivers. Sorry. So, with the shifting pattern, it's getting to where snow caps are becoming more, are going to be declining more and more. The weather is getting warmer in some places, so snow is not going to be falling as much. So with that, there's that a lot of these rivers get their water supply directly from the mountain glaciers. So if the climate change has affected snowfall, where's the what do you think is going to happen to the water supply? So that's going to be one part of the factor that's going to affect farmers, is is our future with climate change and the water supply. Not only that, it's going to be possibly starting to get too hot for some crops. Another part of this segment I want to address is the problem with fossil water. And for those who don't know, fossil water is more or less water that's trapped underground, that was part of possibly an ancient lake or something that had long since dried up, and its remaining water had seeped into the ground, creating aquifers. So now, here's the biggest problem about aquifers. Many of these are not renewable. So, like I said, this fossil water, which is water that's really ancient, that's been trapped underground since the body of water that used to be above them had long since dried up. Anyhow, so with that in mind, a lot of this fossil water is not going to be renewed. It's never going to be. There's some places where you got a problem where farmers are pumping more water out of these aquifers than what's going to be supplied. Now, I'm going to give some credit that there are certain aquifers that can be recharged, but it requires certain circumstances for them to do that, like a area be flooded out, or water that's standing on top of that aquifer. It'll soak up water like a sponge and then store it for a later time. But like I said, there are many aquifers across the world, including in the United States, that are like a one-time use deal. The Ogallala aquifer is the number one I could think of off the top of my head. It's in the Great Plains. That was a big thing I was thinking about, is like the fact that the Great Plains is not exactly the most it's a little bit on the dry side out there, so rain is a little more unpredictable a little bit. Not as bad as the far west, past the Rockies, but still, they're a lot of the farmers out there are required to pump a bunch of water out of the ground to irrigate the crops. So, like I said, this is also creating a big problem, because, like I said, this is not renewable. So what are the farmers going to do whenever these aquifers run dry? Um, that's going to happen in the future. At the rate we're pumping, I'd say it probably be within 50 years that we'll be seeing the Ogallala aquifer dry up. If that was the estimate I remember off the top of my head. Now, the side effect to us pumping all this water out of the ground is, and California is seeing this, is land subsidence. The land is sinking in some places because we're pumping water so much that now you have to worry about not only the water table is going to start going down, the aquifer that's there is going to lose its ability to sponge up any more water if it had the ability to do so to begin with. So, and then there's the effects on buildings, homes that will have to worry about foundation problems because of the subsidence problem because of all the water being pumped out. So that's a knock-on effect from all that. So with also the water supply, I mean, we're already running into a problem already, people, where our rivers are not got the capacity to satisfy everybody. There was already a big fight over the Colorado River with I think 5 states that are affected by it: Colorado, Wyoming, Nevada, California, and Arizona, and New Mexico. Generally, wherever the Colorado River runs through. I mean, the biggest ones that have been taking a lot of the water out from is California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. Those 4 are the biggest ones are taking water out, mainly to supply water for farmers, to supply water for Nevada. Las Vegas, Phoenix. I mean, there was already a big fight between them who's going to get the resources, because when they had set a compact amongst each other saying that they would draw just so much of this water out of the river, and the other state will take that much water, and it goes down the down the line in seniority, who had first to get the rights. So, but this compact was written during the time of an abnormal amount of water flow that was flowing down through the Colorado River. So the compact was based on that amount of water flow at that time period, which, like I said, was not the normal amount. So now that the river is kind of returned to normal in some cases and started going below normal on its flow, now you got a problem where there's not enough water. A lot of the states have had to go take initiatives to cut the water usage on each of the states. And like I said, it leaned into a big old fight over who gets what water and how much, and they were basing it on the old compact, which they just been forced just recently, or they've agreed. I don't, if I remember right, they were forced into an agreement. But any which way, they had come up to an agreement to redraw the amount of water that each state gets based on the current water supply provided by the Colorado River. So with that in mind, the reason why I told this story is to take the fact that there are farmers down in Arizona. Yuma is providing a lot of vegetables down there. A lot of the California, everybody knows, fruits, vegetables, everything comes from California. But the problem is, this is a desert, and they're trying to grow vegetables out there, and now you gotta worry about the dwindling water supply, and in the future, that's going to keep going down. That's not going to go up. Climate change is going to make that a major problem in the future. So these states are going to have to figure out how they're going to come up with water without impacting farmers. And that's where small farms are going to be affected, because now some of them that uses this irrigation, it uses the water in the Colorado for irrigation for their farms, they may be facing more big problems in the future. So it kind of provides it's making it look already bleak out there. Same way with the Great Plains and the Ogallala Aquifer. Y'all are pumping so much water from there, and that water supply is only going to get you so far, and it's when it runs dry, what then? All the rivers over there are going to be suffering the same fate as the Colorado, where the water supply is going to start dwindling, and you're going to have problems trying to get water to irrigate your crops then. So that's going to be one factor out of many that's going to put a squeeze in the future of farming. So okay, this segment I have heard about before, where farmers are forced into only buying their seeds from only one supplier, or they have to sell their produce just to one buyer. They're forced in these contractual agreements, which are not really all that great, because there's a risk that with this, and usually your big businesses can do this. My next segment will explain why. So something like with, let's say, Bayer, because of their seeds have a special patent, because they are copyright patent, whatever they apply to it. Unfortunately, that puts a farmer into a contractual agreement where they can only buy from one supplier, and they could be forced into selling. The problem is with that, is that these suppliers know once they have these farmers into contracts like this, they can gouge the crap out of them. Not only that, if they're forced into a contractual agreement from the buyer, they may force to have to take less than what the produce that they're selling is worth, because that's the way it is. It's like everyone wants the best product, or any product, for the cheapest amount they can get it. And that's another problem, is these problems where the contracts can be could be damaging to a small business. Ones that are just can't carry the weight of a contract like this, especially if they're being undercut. If their income is being undercut for that buyer that they have a contractual agreement with, then it becomes then it really affects these farms' profits, which affects their ability to grow, sustain themselves, buy new equipment, whatever have you. And sometimes these contractual agreements, if I heard right, some of them don't have a choice. Some of these farmers don't got a choice. Like I said, with the seeds, you buy one type of seed, you're obligated to that one particular supplier, because like I said, they could be patented. So that leads into another issue. So a lot of these farmers, I don't think can sustain something like this. But unfortunately, like I said, big businesses have put their hands into what each farm has to do. So, okay, on this segment, I'm going to pick up on a little bit from the last segment, because they both tie in together a little bit. When I said something about some of the seeds have patents on them, because every time, like I said, a seed company does the research and and genetically modifies that seed, they can turn around and put a patent on it. The biggest one that was bad about this is Monsanto. I'm calling them out for this nonsense, because really they've not only, like I said on my last segment, they're forcing farmers into contracts because of the fact that these things are patented, which unfortunately leaves them with no option but to accept one from them, because where are they going to find another seed supplier? I mean, Monsanto, which is now part of Bayer, is one of the largest seed suppliers. So that's a big problem. So this is where it gets scary, people. It really gets scary for these farmers. Monsanto has been suing farmers for violating their intellectual property. They've been using their big size to throw their weight around, and unfortunately, farmers are getting sued. And here's the problem, and this is also, get this, if say a farmer A has a field filled with Monsanto seeds that they are growing, and farmer B is growing the same crop but next door, but using a different seed from a different supplier. So this is where it kind of gets a little scary. If the pollen from farmer A gets over to farmer B's property, pollinates, creates seeds, and the seeds grow into these patented these plants that are covered under the patent. That farmer B faces a lawsuit. They can get sued for accidental pollination. They didn't control that. They didn't ask for it. It's just because they were next door and they kept growing the same plant. So now you got another problem for farmers. not only do you have to worry about stupid contracts, you also have to worry about whether you're going to get sued or not because of a case of accidental uh, pollination from another farmer's field that has that genetically modified seed that he's planted. So that's going to affect someone's profits, or even if they can even get around that, because these mega companies are putting or I bet you are demanding major dollars for so-called damages for something that the farmer farmer B, could not control. So, I mean, it says here, Monsanto has sued 410 farmers, 56 small businesses in 27 states. Because they claim that their intellectual property had been violated. I think it is Bayer and Monsanto's way to monopolize the market. That's what it is. That's what's boiling down to. They want to monopolize the market where you have no choice, absolutely no choice, but to buy from them, and they could turn around and gouge these poor farmers into whatever price that they are forced to pay just to keep their farms going. That's what it's going to boil down to. So, it's nuts. It's nuts. But this is a complete fact. This is a complete fact. And it says here, 145 individual farmers for were sued for patent infringement, and out of that, only 11 has ever won a case. 11 people. We're talking about small farmers against a mega corporation. Now we're talking about Bayer, which is based out in Germany, is trying to weasel in the American market, and now they think they can try to purchase Monsanto to monopolize our market. Well, there you go. I leave it to you to decide to think about that one. So, okay. My next segment here is another part of the environmental factors is the problem with soil degradation, or the declining fertility of soil. Unfortunately, we humans, for the last several thousand years, have been ironically plowing the earth to death, thinking it's always going to be there for us, it's always going to be renewed, and we've been taking that for granted. Now, unfortunately, in some parts, it's catching up with us. A lot of places are you having to use a lot of fertilizer just to make up the difference. It's getting like where you have to like I said, you have to fertilize it quite a lot just to get it back to where it's usable. However, it's not a long-term solution. The thing is with soil, it's not something that, or the fertility of the soil doesn't get created overnight. This takes a very, very long time for the fertility of the soil to be created. In most cases, it takes a lot of organic matter decaying, a lot of bacteria, insects help. I mean, everyone's seen night crawlers or earthworms, whichever way you want to call it. They help with aerating the soil, providing that kind of mixing up the plant matter with just plain sand, the sand. We've plowed it to death where it's not replenishing itself fast enough, and then we use pesticides, which may be killing off the insects that we need to create new soil or maintain the ones that we have. So we got a double down problem where new soil is not being maintained by everything because of the chemicals that we're using, and we're pulling nutrients all the nutrients out of the ground that's needed to grow these plants. Therefore, we have to use fertilizer just to cover the difference, and it's just going to lead into a cycle where we're just going to pull more nutrients. We'll have to use more fertilizer, and that's going to be running costs. That's going to add up against with farmers, because now they're having to use more chemicals, which, like I said, all the while this is all going on, we also have to worry about the environmental runoff. All these chemicals are now leaching out into our rivers, affecting our drinking supplies. There's been I know this is a side issue, but it is a knockoff effect from all this this cycle that we're stuck in right here of fertilization, soil degradation, nutrient loss, and all this. All that runoff is getting into our rivers. That goes out to the seas, which is causing algal bloom, and which is strangling the fish. And those those part of the coast that needs those fish to make their living, now they have to suffer from that. Um, Everyone is being affected. Um, and not only that, we have to worry about, I mean, the thing with algal blooms is once they start, they deplete the oxygen out of the ocean, out of that section. I mean, it's it can. I mean, if you get that into a pond, lake, or something like that, it can it can virtually suck the oxygen straight out and make it and make the water pretty much dead, where nothing can live in there. It That's just one problem. Another problem with the land. We're suffering from. I mean, if we're talking about coastal areas where there's like Louisiana and parts of Mississippi and Alabama, where they are close to the Gulf of Mexico. They got another problem they have to eventually worry about is the land is subsiding in some sections, and then there's also the problem with the water from the sea getting encroaching into the land, and making that section of land nothing but salt. That makes anything impossible to grow. If that area, which, like say, it's on the edge of a swampland, and you've been using it to grow sugar cane, for example, you'll have to start worrying, like, how much more longer can you keep growing there before the salt water from the Gulf of Mexico starts encroaching in, leaching into the soil, degrading that, making it so salty that nothing can grow. That's another factor that the coastal states are going to have to sit and think about. I mean, I think also it could also, if not mistaken, on the East Coast, on the flatter edges of the East Coast, like in the Carolinas, Georgia, if they're growing anything, then they're like really close to the shorelines out there. Then they have to worry about the encroachment of the Atlantic Ocean and turning that freshwater bayou, swamp, estuary, whatever, turning it from freshwater to brackish to nothing but salt water. The prime example, I've seen an article where off the Carolinas, they've had large areas of forest that was part of an estuary or a swamp, and a lot of the trees there have died because of the encroachment of the sea. The seawater has gotten in where fresh water usually is, killing off the plants. So imagine this. I mean, if you got a farm that's right off the not far from there, from the edge of the sea, or some kind of area that's like not far off from the sea level, then you have to worry about all this encroachment biz, and that's going to put pressure on some of these farmers out here. Definitely on the coastal areas, it may force a lot of them to rethink farming down there, and they may have to move away, because once saltwater or salt has intruded on soil, it's worthless. It takes a very long time for it to get clear that salt out. I mean, we are also dealing with a lot. Oh yes, we're and while we're on the subject of land, we're also dealing with problems with overgrazing, and how this is also causing erosion problems. A lot out west is chiefly cattle. It's chiefly cattle. When you get past the Great Plains, there's nothing that really grows, at least not too well, not without some kind of irrigation system. A biggest problem that you have to worry about is overgrazing on these very delicate grasses, and because with rain very limited, grass doesn't grow very fast out there. So it's dwindling the fertility. That's kind of not affecting. That's not helping the fertility of the soil out there. I mean, it's just, we got problems with soil erosion, and many. I wouldn't be surprised it'd be more than just out west. It's mainly on other parts of the country, because we are mismanagement of the soil. So a lot of the, and we've basically what I'm trying to say is, with that, I may have not stated it correctly. The best way I'm trying to say is, we've been doing some unsustainable management of our soil, and we, like I said, overgrazing, not keeping windbreaks to keep soil from blowing away. Well, hello there, Cass. But anyhow, we're dealing with the fact that we're not managing the soil correctly. So we have that's going to be putting a lot of strain eventually. So I mean, this is a big problem. This is going to be a big problem eventually. The land degradation, and really, it's going to end up catching up with us. So okay, in this segment of this video, I want to point out two other factors, and one is a major factor and other is like a sort of a side factor. Anyhow, the major factor that could affect farm is labor shortages. Now, as I stated in my last video, one of the biggest problems that is facing farms is the fact that no one wants to go work on a farm anymore. It's not as glamorous, it doesn't pay that well, and no one's really gunning for a farming job. This puts pressure on farmers. When they need the help, they need to run the farm, they're sometimes left high and dry and have to manage everything with what little labor that they do have. Sometimes if they have to increase their wages to pay for somebody, that cuts into their profits, making it harder for them. I mean, a lot of these farm jobs are seasonal. They're based on whatever is growing, and many other times it's these a lot of these farm hands, unfortunately, face moments where they're working for most of the growing season. That probably is spring to autumn, when it's time to harvest, and in the winter they're basically furloughed. They still have a job for the farm. Some of them may still have a job with the farmer, but they just don't work. That leaves them trying to figure out what they're going to do during the slow periods. Just like teachers, I've heard that that don't get paid during the summer months, so they have to take part-time jobs or extra jobs on this outside of the classroom during the summer to kind of make up for the difference of their pay for what they was getting while they were inside the classroom versus outside the classroom. So same factor applies for these for the farm hands. So what I'm trying to get at with this is, like, this does not help the local farmers. That kind of puts them in difficult positions, like how they manage to keep the farm running with the ever shrinking labor supply. They're forced to have to hire migrant workers, workers from out of this, they're from this from another country. I mean, there's that's why you got a lot of you got a lot of people have to come in from south of the border to work on these farms for these farmers. I mean, just so they can probably. So I mean, it works. I mean, I know it works both ways. It helps the farmer out, and it sends them. It makes them money to send back home to Mexico when they go back. But like I said, it's seasonal work. It's only temporary, and that's what farmers are forced into sometimes, is accept help from outside of this country. In some cases, to really help maintain the farm. I mean, this affects the price that you pay at the supermarket when it comes to your produce, or your fruits and your other fruits and vegetables in general. So that is one factor that's really putting a pinch on farms. I mean, like I said, now a lot of young kids don't want to do farm work. A lot of people don't want to enter farm work because it's only considered part-time or seasonal, and I mean, and this puts a pinch. It puts sometimes farmer in the position of accepting farm workers from outside of this country, outside our borders, to keep and maintain a farm going, because of the shortage that that's presented to them, because not enough Americans or domestic labor supply don't want to enter into the farming, or don't want to work for the farm for those reasons right there, because it's not considered stable, pays enough. It's not considered long term, pays well, don't provide benefits. I mean, these farmers sometimes just can't pay for that. I mean, if they're already squeezed enough with other factors considered, they have to deal with the cost of their supplies, machine maintenance of the machines themselves. I mean, and then you have then you got to pay for the labor. I mean, and by the time they've sold their produce, or whatever they are, or whether it be beef or vegetables, whatever have you, they're sometimes having to take a have to sell for a lot less than their expectations, which leaving not a very big profit margin. So it's putting a lot more strain having to deal with that. Okay, the government. This is going to go back through history a little bit, because the government has been in and out of the agricultural sector. I mean, mainly more recently than not. I mean, some farm. The thing that gets me about government is the fact that they are very unpredictable when it comes to the agricultural sector. They provide subsidies, but they're not guaranteed. I don't think they're going to be guaranteed, because it could be one Congress comes in, it says that they're going to provide the subsidies, and then the next Congress comes in after that, after their tenure, their term is up. The next Congress come in, and they may say, no, we're not going to provide that subsidy now. Now the farmer has to work his farm with the ebbs and flows of the politics of our country. That can also put it could be a factor. I mean, it's not the biggest factor, but it is a factor that don't help. And also government regulations and oversight. There's more and more regulations going in every year. I do remember seeing an article once where a pig farmer was fined because the fact that the manure runoff had done damage to the local environment. So he got fined for that. And the fact that, what was it? Also that runoff was affecting the local water supply. So now farmers have to be careful what they're doing, because now they have to worry about whether they're going to get fined from the federal government, or it could also have to worry about fines and levies from state and local governments for some kind of action that their farm is doing. And then there's the regulations, the laws and regulations there, and ordinances that makes things a little bit more harder. I'm for sure that our agricultural sector is always up in arms, beating their heads and trying to deal with the fact that all these regulations are complicating matters for them. I mean, especially with EPA getting involved, and that makes things even more complicated. So yeah, with that, this is what I mean with the government. I mean, not only that, like I said, do they have with the government, you have to worry about factors of rules and, like I said, rules, regulations, possible fines and levies, unpredictable subsidies, or assistance from the government, whether they will or won't. Because, like I said, it's really depends on who's in charge. Um, so these are there's possibly another there's probably a little bit more with this area, um, but I think I've covered a broad stroke of some of the problems that farmers face. There's probably some more details, but if I have to, I'll add that to the to a third video if more information comes up. But for now, I just want to do a general overview with the government because it's not the largest section here. But yeah, with labor and government, that's two of the factors that farmers face when dealing with their farms, especially the future of farming as well. Whether anyone's going to even consider it, considering these are some of the factors too. So. Okay, now we have another segment on how financial institutions and the stock market can affect how farmers can make their money, or on others, how they can borrow money. So one thing that will affect a farmer as far as the stock market, when it comes to stock market speculation is another factor that could help can affect him. Speculation on the grains can drive up the price of each commodity or bring it down. So the reason why this affects farmers is because when speculators play on the stock market, that can either cut a farmer's income by more or less whenever when something is only valued far less than their expectations. That cuts into a farmer's profits, or they can get a big payday whenever the price of everything has gone up far above expectations. So they get a great bonus right there. So that's part of the reason why the stock market has some effect. Now, moving over into the financial institutions, this something that should have tied in, that kind of ties in with the government too. When the Federal Reserve plays with the interest rates, that can affect affect a farm's ability to borrow money when it really needs it the most. Sometimes there's moments where the harvest is weak and they need money to tie over to the next harvest, or something into that effect. It's more mainly to help them move into how what may it's either help them get by, or help them make purchases where big purchases that they don't have the cash for right away, especially when it comes to equipment, or um, anything uh, anything business related. There's some expenses right there. So when the interest rate goes up and down, that also can affect how much how much they're forced to pay in interest rates. That cuts into their profits as well. So that kind of affects them in a negative way. It's it's something else. Um, I mean, another thing, when the market, another thing about the stock market, I just thought of this, is like when um, whenever the oil, when we're talking about uh, the stock market and the oil prices and fuel cost, it affects their fuel costs, which affects them at their pocket, because now with the market volatility when it comes to fuel, now you got a problem where how much of their own profits have to pay for the put fuel in the tractors to get to even do the planting, harvesting, whatever. And when you got that volatility in the stock market, there with the oil, that can affect them as well. So I didn't think about this until just now. Whew. I mean, there's a lot. It's just funny. It's just really funny to me how if you sit and think about it, how the stock market and can really play an effect, especially speculators and those who have been trying to bet on play like Russian roulette, and think like and try to bet whether or not whether we're going to have a good harvest or not. They may take a gamble on it, which could also affect prices. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, it's nuts to me. Okay, for this segment, I want to talk about the transportation cost. Because in any business, that is a big expense. I touched on last segment about fuel costs. Now, that also carries over into transportation costs. When you're having to haul your grain, your products from farm going to the market, that's another factor that kind of cuts into a farmer's profits is transportation cost, because if you got to truck that stuff in, and fuel prices are ungodly high, that also really affects the farmer's ability to make any money. It's running. If you gotta use a semi and to and then you gotta hire your driver and everything else to move that stuff in. That's getting into some pretty big costs, because now you gotta pay for the driver's expense, and then you gotta pay for the fuel, and then the permits, insurances on that vehicle, just so you can haul your produce to the market. Now, many farmers also just have a third party come and pick up the grain from wherever, from their silos or wherever they have on their farm, and take it to the market there. But that's still, sometimes, in some cases, there is there's a charge for that, unless it's the supplier. The buyer that is paying for the fuel, paying for the transportation costs to bring that stuff to the market or to their factory or whatever have you. But this is an extra cost that now farmers have to bear. So it's, like I said, that this is something that they have. That's one of the many factors that cuts into their profits. So, okay. In this video, I touched on several factors. I've touched on how climate change and the water supply is in decline. I've touched on the soil degradation problem, and how our management and overuse of the land has diminished its ability to carry everything. I've touched on government regulations and the labor costs that affect the farmers' pay. I also touched on the market and financial institutions, how they can also affect a farmer and their ability to pay for these expenses. How the markets how their fluctuations can affect a farmer's pay, whether they're going to get big pay or they're going into a deficit. I've also touched into financial institutions, how the Feds and the interest rates, whether they're going up and down, affect their ability to pay to take out loans, how much they're paying in interest, how that's going to affect their pay. And Then I touched on the final subject on this video is transportation costs, and in the last video I did mention about fuel costs and how that factors in. But transportation costs, fuel costs together, I touched on that and how that is affecting American farmers, and how that can also affect their pay, and all these factors together. I mean, this is why I say we're in for a rough ride. And on top of my first video I made, you got a lot of, like I said, a lot of those factors adding in. A lot of the older farmers are aging out, and and not very many younger folk are coming in to replace them. They're not really been able to hand over their family farm, those that they've had for generations, over to the next generation, because they don't want it. I've touched into more and the same, more or less. I've added on from that last video with this video all together, and those factors, and kind of expanded onto them. So I hope that with what I have done with this video kind of expands the mental thinking and the woes that American farmers face. Why I see that there's going to be a bleak future for farming, and how, like I said on my first video, a lot of the mega corporations have pretty much driven out a lot of your small farms, especially with one of the factors, the Monsanto lawsuits that's still ongoing. The threat of lawsuit all the time has really would probably scare anybody to get into farming. So that's something to add in the summary. So it's why I'm saying, altogether, farmers are having a tough time, and it's not. I don't see it getting any better. It's going to get worse gradually. I mean, not right away, but gradually over the next few years. It's not going to be all big changes all at once, but sometime it's going to be gradual, where we're going to start seeing a decline of small farms, because they'll probably have problems trying to compete with mega farms and mega businesses. Because, like I said before, when you mix big money in with into the mix, it's usually the small guys that get kicked out. So I hope you like the work I did. It's been labor intensive to do this part of the video. I've been wanting to do this because I wanted to point out the scary thought that with farmers big with small time farms are struggling, and now we have to worry eventually about mega corporations basically buying up all of our farmland, and almost like a monopoly, gouge us gouge us in the long run, because then they know that that they can charge whatever, and they can pull the strings like a puppet master behind the scenes and force us into lining their pockets even more with more cash. And that's what I'm afraid the outcome of all this is going to be. So, food for thought, something to think about, and really take notice. If I were an average American, I would put my head on the swivel and look up and start looking around and seeing these factors, because, like I said multiple times, big business ain't there to benefit you. They're there to benefit themselves and their shareholders. So it's usually us small guys that get screwed in the end. So anyhow, like I said, I hope you liked the video, and I will see you on the next one.